Thank you, Brother Sims. I just want to introduce myself. I am Angela Lundberg from the 8th Ward, and I am in the Stake Relief Society presidency. I'm just going to read through our program today. We will start with an introduction by Nancy Bird, after which we'll hear from Wayne Peterson via video regarding technology, and then we'll hear from our Stake Relief Society president, Lori Brockbank, regarding some household information, after which we'll hear from President Bowen regarding medical information, and then we'll hear from Pearson Frank regarding end-of-life care, and lastly we'll hear from Jeff Collette regarding financial issues, and we'll go to that point.
Hi everyone, I'm Nancy Bird and I'm from the 12th Ward. Used to be in the 8th Ward for several years. I am a recent widow. I lost my husband Kyle Bird in July 25th of 24. And our Bird family has had 6 losses in 4 years. And each of them have come with different circumstances, and my father-in-law was the first one at 91, an amazing life. Everything was in place. Barbara didn't have to do much of anything but go with her kids and, you know, they didn't pick out the casket and stuff like that together, but outside of that, Barbara was well taken care of. The next one was my son, our son. He was 33. He had no life insurance. He had no contact really with his kids anymore. He was a severe alcoholic, and he was put on life support right in the heat of COVID. And as a family, we had to make the decision to remove him from life support and then let him go. The next one was my son-in-law at 30 years old in 22. And he left a wife, my daughter, and 3 kids, a 7-year-old son, a 2-year-old little girl, and a 9-week-old baby, a little girl. And Nicole at 28 years old had no idea what to do with life at that point. Everything was in Jared's name. The house was in Jared's name. All the vehicles were in Jared's name, trailer, everything. Nicole had no clue what to do. She wasn't on his account. She didn't have any access to anything. The person who Jared was hit head-on in a car accident and was killed instantly, and the person that hit him didn't have car insurance, and so money-wise and stuff like that, she was only able to receive the $100,000 that Jared's life insurance had on uninsured or low-insured people. And so that was a big wake-up call. And then we had my sister-in-law Lisa. She had a brain tumor, and they gave her 15 to 17 months to live. She lived 17 months. Todd and Lisa had ample time to talk, work things out, have all their arrangements made, and everything went fairly smoothly for Todd and their family. The next one was Barrett Bushman. My brother-in-law, he was so amazing, and he was the neighborhood gift, the man that would do anything and everything for anybody that was around him. And he absolutely 100% spoiled Lori and took care of everything for Lori. She, didn't ever want for anything. He did everything for her. He had a massive stroke and was unable to talk. And so he lived 11 months. And we all believe that he lived 11 months to allow Lori to get her feet underneath her so that she could be able to function in life because she never had to do anything. She didn't even know how to put gas in her car. She didn't, registering your car, doing taxes, doing all this, passwords, everything. She didn't have anything. And so that was, a big challenge. And then the last one was my Kyle. At 61 years old, went to work and had a massive heart attack. Never came home. And his work, he worked for the West Jordan City. He had life insurance policies for me. He had, stuff like that was arranged. The only thing we had arranged as a couple was where we were going to be buried. Kyle's parents had 2 plots in Murray, and they decided when Kyle's dad passed away that they would bury him deeper so that Barb would go on top of him, and then Kyle and I would have the other plot so that we could all be together like we have been in our home. We've lived with them since 2011 and been taking care of the home and taking care of them. And they wanted us to be right there together when the kids all come to visit. So my advice to you all is to work together, clean the house together, cook together, change sheets, make a bed, put gas in your car, learn how to mow a lawn. I mean, all these little things that nobody ever thinks about until they're gone. And then you're like, oh. Kyle and I did everything together. I was very blessed that way. I was very independent. And so I didn't have any of those struggles for me to have to go out and shovel the snow. I did that for him because he was on call. Whenever it snowed, he left the house at 4 a.m. Mowing the lawn, I would mow the lawn and pull weeds. And while he was gone to Alaska, I'd take care of his birds and do all the things, and he did so much for me. He was always there for me. He would come to my work, bring me lunch. Stop by with a Coke and a Snickers to get me through the day. He was so amazing to me, and I'm grateful for the relationship that we had, and the knowledge that I have that he will be with me, be waiting for me when my time comes. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Nancy, so much for kind of giving us a reason why we want to hold this. We've had so many unexpected deaths in this stake, and so we as a Relief Society and the stake presidency decided this was a needed thing. And so we've asked some different people to come and kind of share their expertise with you about some topics. We are not going to solve the problems of the world today. We're just going to give you a starting off point. The handouts will probably be the most helpful thing. And so the first one we're going to start with is the digital world, which is the one that's stapled. And so Wayne Peterson is probably the most knowledgeable person I know about technology. He cannot leave his home though. So we're going to have Wayne talk to us via
the items that need to be addressed prior to an individual's passing, so that there can be more stability and peace in the technology arena.
So he says he goes right along with this.
It matters greatly that we prepare. Unlike many aspects of a person's life, the digital world will continue after we're gone. Online accounts, memberships, archives will not disappear with the death event. Data lives on. Much of the information that is present online is potentially important to our survivors and demands our attention. Access to this information could be vital to many other areas of settling the estate, communications with others, and keeping important memories. As an aside, if there are files or information that is not relevant to be kept, this is an ideal opportunity to winnow it down and remove the debris. Here are some steps that should be taken to prepare. First, make a list of all your devices. This should include computers, tablets, phones, external drives, including both external hard drives and USB memory sticks. Make a listing of all of your online accounts. These could include your email accounts, your social media accounts, your banking and financial institution accounts, your online subscriptions. In each case, it will be important to include your login information and the password you have assigned to that account. This is a very important, sometimes tedious step that must be taken and then kept up to date with each change that you make. There are solid password manager programs out there that will work well, or there is the alternative of a spreadsheet or a paper and pencil tracking. Whatever works for you, but this is key information and will be needed to be kept up and to date and accurate. Once you have a handle on the accounts online, you need to gain control of the data in your home or your home office. To do this, you will want to create an organization on your computer in your computer space. On your computers, you need to create a system of folders that make sense, not only to you, but to those who will access it after you are gone. You can have a folder for business items, for personal items, for photos, important documents, histories, memories, etc. And inside of these folders, there could be subfolders to an infinite level, so that to your satisfaction, people will be able to follow the train of thought. By taking time to group and organize, there is a much higher likelihood that the items you want to transition to your survivors will be found and be read. You will want to also label each of the physical components of your digital world. Each external drive should have a label or markings on it to identify its use and contents. It's very important to keep your surviving spouse from having to go through, plug in a drive, and try to figure out what on earth you were thinking when you put this together. If you can label it or identify it as USB stick number 1 with a marker or Sharpie, and then note on a paper what's contained on that drive, it will be of huge value to the person that's trying to follow up. Having gone to the effort of organizing your computer files, you'll want to make sure that they are archived and backed up to avoid catastrophic loss of data. There are many cloud services that can be used, or periodic backing up to a local external drive will do the trick. Sharing data with your family will place it in more locations. This is specifically true of photos and videos. Another item that merits your attention will be the social media services that are used. For some, this is a small footprint. I often refer to myself as a voyeur on Facebook. I seldom post anything but enjoy the information and insights. Others, this is something of a lifestyle and of major importance. Decisions need to be made for the legacy of those accounts. Keep them active, delete them, memorialize them, or transfer them, but you must make a decision. Phones are another important item. Decisions are needed as to the phone numbers used. It will continue to ring and receive calls. Do you abandon the phone number? Do you transfer it? Do you put a recording on it? What other step? The phone itself, the hardware, should be backed up. And then you have the decision of keeping it intact as is, or wipe it back to factory reset for security and safety. As you go through the process, start with one area, get it how you want it to be. Once your initial investment of effort is done, maintain your digital world and move forward to another area. Know that there are people whom you can trust to assist you. Grandchildren seem these days to be born with an innate knack for computer use. They can be very helpful. Others around you also may be of value, friends, neighbors, as long as you turn to sources that you truly trust. Scammers are present in the world today. Be suspicious. That's a characteristic that is noteworthy and commendable. Don't initially trust everyone. There are scamming that goes on, and we don't want you to fall prey to that. Okay, I've provided each of you with a checklist to assist you in walking through this process. Thank you for your attendance. Good luck as you work through this preparation area. I appreciate your attention. Have a good day. Thank you.
We appreciate Wayne making that, and the handout, he said, goes right along with it. And we understand, I mean, we're giving you, we're feeding you, giving you a drink with a fire hose. We're giving you tons of information today, and so I think the handouts are gonna be the most helpful thing. So that's it, and we know that you can't do it in a day, and we appreciate, we know that, but we just wanted to give you some things. So my topic is household things that sometimes need to be taken care of when you lose a loved one. And this can be an uncomfortable topic. When Harold got sick in 2017 and we thought he might pass away because of kidney failure, we started having these conversations, and he made for me a packet, and it's called Harold is Dead. Okay, and so you can put humor into this, and when I pulled out my Harold is Dead packet, I found a bunch of things that need to be updated, and so, but in there are some important things like the size of the furnace filters, and the important thing is like, as a couple, many times we do not do things as a couple. I mean, Nancy does, but Harold and I, we have our assigned topics, you know, and we do our different things, and so, and that works, but you need to understand what your spouse does. Or when we lost our daughter, we needed to take care of some of the things that she had, and that kind of thing, and it's difficult when you lose a loved one, because every piece of paper they've touched you don't want to throw away, and it takes a little bit of time until you can do that, so it's important to do that. So when we decided to do this topic as a stake, I talked to a lot of widows in our stake, and they told me a lot of things. And the biggest thing is that they said, live for today, you know, enjoy today. Do not get obsessed with dying. Just enjoy being where you are in your lives. And the next thing is that enjoy the moment. And then the other thing is that you probably need to write things down. It's difficult when you try and remember. I talked to one widow, and she said, we had talked about all the finances, and she goes, and then when he was gone, I didn't really know what to do. So write down what you talk about too. And I know that that can be challenging, so keep that in mind. So I went through a few things. One of the people said to me that this can be perplexing. And it is perplexing. And so I've just given you a really brief handout, and this is not inclusive. These are just things that, as I talk to different people, these are things that they wish they'd have known. And so I've got it as a checklist. And when you can, if you do one a week for the next, 20 weeks, half a year, you can get all these things done. You don't have to try and do it all in one day. So the first thing is know where the shutoffs are and when to shut it off. I know we had one widow, her basement flooded because she didn't turn her water off in the winter. And so it's important to know where those shutoffs are inside the house and outside the house. So I've got there your gas, your water, your electric. The furnace and air conditioning and what the needs are for your system. What you need to do each, how often do you need to change the filters? How often do you need to do that? Sprinklers and hoses. Any minor household problems. If your husband's like doing a clogged toilet, have him show you how to do it. If you're cooking a meal, show him how to do that. Wayne said to me when we were talking about this, he says, I don't know where the detergent is because Laura does all the laundry. So if you need to show your husband where the detergent is. So just the little things in your house. What yard care? Know how to mow, to fertilize, to do any bug sprays and all that kind of stuff. You'll also find over the next year, as you're with your spouse, there's yearly chores. There's chores that we do, seasonal chores. There's yearly chores, there's monthly chores, there's weekly chores, there's daily chores. And so just being aware of those, and just as you do it, you go, oh, that's something I do every year. Write that down for your loved ones, whether it's a spouse or a child. Because many times, like when my father passed away, my mother was a widow for 28 years, and so she needed help with those things with her kids. Know where the location of your documents are. Where are the titles to your cars and your home? Those are important things to know. Your list of bills. And I'm sure that Jeff's going to talk about that, but know which ones are paid automatically. You might have subscriptions that every month, like I get my quick quick quack bill every month. Harold doesn't even know about my quick quack bill. So it's important to have those, that they know, so that you don't keep paying that money to the car wash when you're not washing your car. One of the people said to me they didn't have any of their spouse's work contacts, and her husband died, and she didn't know how to contact him. And they finally called her after 2 days and said, "Where is so and so?" And she was like, "I didn't even know how to contact you." So having a list of who needs to be contacted, friends and family that need to be notified, have those phone numbers. If they're just in your spouse's phone, have those, maybe a list or something so that you can let them know. How to care for pets. One of our people, they have a safe and they can't get into the safe because their spouse did not give anybody the combo. And so that's important there. Any funeral arrangements that you need to make, what your preferences are, if you have prearranged plans, and you will need multiple death certificates when someone passes away. And that's important to have. Some places will take a copy of a death certificate, but other places want an actual copy. And then how they want to distribute their personal items. So this is just a thing to help, and it's just to kind of get you talking to each other and knowing where those things are and making an effort. And so it's not something you want to do all in one day. Take some time to do it. Just take it a little bit at a time. And so that's my advice to you is get your, however you want to title it. We at our house joke about Harold is dead. But just know that those are important things that you need to do. And I share this with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. You're up. Okay.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming. Some of these topics are a little bit tender, and we have to be careful. I worked last night, and so my filter wears out after a night shift. So I'm going to try not to offend anyone. So if you'll pull out the pulsed form, this is the one that I'm going to just talk about and try to give a little bit of information.
And it's printed back to front.
This is the standard form in Utah to designate your end-of-life care wishes. And it's something that we don't really want to think about because when these questions are coming up, you're in bad shape. And this is something we deal with very often in the emergency department. And so I want to try to educate a little bit on what these different sections mean and then give a little bit of advice on that, on what else should be done here. So we'll just go through the sections. Section A is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And so this is what you may hear the term code status. And in the hospital, if you hear code blue, that means someone is either not breathing or their heart has stopped. And so what are the doctors supposed to do in that instance? And you have three options there. One is attempt to resuscitate. And that's the option that means we do everything. And so all of the things that can be done to resuscitate are going to be done. The second option is do not attempt or continue any resuscitation, which is the DNR, or do not resuscitate. And the last one is I do not wish to express. It's not a very useful box, because that's the assumption that the other two are not checked, is that you haven't expressed anything. And the education there is CPR is very aggressive care. And it's chest compressions, it's usually broken ribs because of those compressions, it's breathing tubes, plastic breathing tubes placed through the trachea to breathe. If the heart goes into an unstable rhythm, it's shocks to the chest. And so this is, you imagine whatever medical drama you want to think of, this is what you see when things are going badly. And it can be a difficult thing. Now, of course, it's quite useful in many instances, but I've had instances also where a 95-year-old patient comes in from a nursing home where they've been kind of languishing for years and years and years, and there's either no information or an old form that says full resuscitation. And it's terrible, honestly, because it's really the things that we do in those resuscitations are almost never successful in those cases, and it's really traumatic to the patient. And so these are things that are important to designate, but also to continue to revisit, depending on the circumstances of your life. Now, the next one is medical interventions. And the two that go together, so full treatment also requires the full resuscitation. So you have to check the first box in section A if you're going to check the first box in section B. Those go together. Now you can start to do a little bit more of the what we sometimes call the a la carte menu in the hospital on the second section, which is limited additional interventions. So that means that you don't want full resuscitation. So you may not want to have chest compressions and shocks, but you want additional treatment. And that's quite a reasonable thing, because a lot of people that may not want full resuscitation may want antibiotics for an infection, or they may want a brief period of breathing assistance if they have an asthma flare-up or something like that, which is quite reasonable. But you have a little bit more ability to designate what you do or don't want there. And then the third box down is comfort measures. And that means we're not going to do anything to prolong life. We're going to keep you comfortable. I look at that as like the minimum. I mean, that one we kind of do anyway, at least we try to do. But this just puts it more in writing that is your goal. Your goal is to maintain the comfort. And then the last one, no preference. That usually, the problem with no preference in the hospital is if you can imagine someone coming in an extreme situation and we don't have a preference, the reflex of the emergency department is to do everything. That's how we're geared. That's what we do. We do everything until we're told not to do everything, other than in circumstances where it's just obvious or the care would be considered futile care. So understand that saying nothing means you're kind of saying do everything on those circumstances. And then the artificial nutrition, that's kind of a separate category, more in a long-term care facility. That would be a feeding tube, either through your nose or mouth, or directly through the abdominal wall, where they can just feed directly into your stomach or GI tract. And that's often something that needs to be done for a variety of reasons. Like if you can't swallow safely without aspirating into your lungs, then you may have a perfectly functioning brain and body, but you just don't swallow well or something and need a feeding tube for that. Or your stomach doesn't work, and so you need something to bypass that. There's a lot of reasons that you might need that. Sometimes people get artificial nutrition when they're in a vegetative state, and those are questions that you need to be clear about, and some of the conversations you need to have. Like, would you want to be kept alive in a vegetative state with artificial nutrition? And I have my personal views on it that I've expressed to my wife, and that's what I would encourage people to do, is have those conversations about when you would want artificial nutrition or bypassed nutrition, I guess. And then the last one, I think section D is one of the most important things. This is where you designate a person to speak for you when you can't speak for yourself. And ultimately, that person is going to have a lot of power, okay, in how this all goes. And if there's something that seems inappropriate about how things are designated in A, B, or C, this person has a lot of power to be able to designate what your wishes are. And so I think that box is probably the most important. And what I would say with all of these boxes is it is vitally important that you communicate what your desires are to close family members, especially the person you designate, but really to all family members. Because if you can imagine that someone comes into the ER and they're badly injured or very sick, and we have a family member that is saying, we want you to do everything, please do everything, and we have a piece of paper that says, don't do anything. It's a lot easier to just kind of tuck the paper away and do what the person is asking you to do, okay? It's very difficult to say, well, the paper says do not resuscitate. Even though you're begging me to try and save your family member, we're just gonna sit here and watch. So you can kind of see how that could play out in these situations. And in general, you're gonna move forward and do what the family member is asking you to do, unless it's totally unreasonable. And so that's why I say the most important thing here is that you talk about it, have open conversations, and have those conversations when you're not in a bad situation. You know, there's many patients I've had who are, you know, their oxygen is very low, they're not gonna survive very long with that level of oxygen, and we are for the very first time having a conversation on whether or not they would want a breathing tube, or whether or not they would want other end-of-life measures. And that's a really difficult time to have those conversations. So really, the earlier you can talk about these things, the more likely you'll be able to have the care that you want. Yeah.
To go along with this, there's nothing that talks about not keeping the person comfortable though. That is something that medical will do anyway, or is that
Yes.
part of something
Well,
that?
so you can check comfort care measures,
Okay.
but it's kind of understood that
Okay.
that we, you know, if someone's in pain,
Yeah.
it's always okay to give them pain medicine. You know, I mean, that would, and even if the family member says we don't want them to have pain medicine and they're sitting there suffering, I'm probably just going to give them pain medicine. Like I guess I would not care too much what they said, because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Which family members tend to override what might be in writing? You said sometimes, you know, if I put something in writing and my wife is supportive of that, and one of my siblings says, no, we want you to do something else, is that gonna override what my wife is?
No, there's kind of a hierarchy of that, and a wife would be number one on that list in general, unless someone else was designated with that name. But if there is a name here that supports what is being said there, that's gonna be what gets done. You know, so those two things being consistent, that's what's going to happen. We kind of joke that it's always the black sheep in the family that makes bad decisions, you know, that says, oh no, we got to do everything to save him. And I don't know if it's like one last chance to, you know, to do the wrong thing, or if it's just what happens in those situations. Sometimes I guess, to be more serious, this is what I said about the filter, right? Yeah.
I don't want my wife being in a position where she's gotta
Yes.
deal with that. At
And
the same time,
to-
she's
To be fair, I do think there's a level of guilt that happens sometimes when people have been the black sheep in the family. And sometimes they interpret these situations as a chance to maybe come in and save the day or be the hero. And it's really unfortunate in those cases.
Does this need to be notarized?
That I don't know. I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, I don't think there's any.
Needs a physician's signature.
Yeah, physician signature and then your signature. Yeah, there's a bunch of signatures at the bottom, and I think as long as that's done, is that accurate? Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, Steve and Steve.
Where is this piece of paper recorded?
So you can have your primary physician put it in your medical record, and it can reside in your medical record. Now understand there's going to be 3 million pages of medical records there, so it can be a little bit difficult to find. A lot of people will keep these and hand them to the EMS staff as they come into the hospital. If you're at a care center, they always have them on file and send them, well, most of the time send them to the hospital when you're transported there. And so it's important. That's why I also say communicate it to your loved ones, because you may not have time to bring the paper with you, but if it's clearly communicated and they're communicating reasonable treatment plans, then it's quite easy. You know, when we have a reasonable family member that says they don't want any of this done, then we can really focus our attention on keeping people comfortable, helping them die with dignity, and having it be a situation where the family can then gather together. It really is important to have those conversations. And then Steve?
In response to this further comment over here, Linda and I both have the option, of course, to override whatever we have in our written, signed DNR.
Yes.
As a next layer of consultation, our oldest daughter, who also happens to be a nurse, has the next level of authority in case Linda and I are both gone. She has, or in the hospital, she has the authority to make decisions for us. and it's expected she would consult with our other kids as well. So we have kind of that double layer of.
Yeah, I actually think that's very smart too, to have one designated person that then communicates with the rest of the family. It puts pressure on them, like it can be a hard situation, but to have it coming through a single voice, it is actually quite helpful, so that they have to eventually make that final determination. Yeah, Sister Brew?
Also have a conversation on organ donation
Yeah. Yep.
and how much, what do you expect, what, all the things.
Yes, and those are, that's a very good thing to know what their desires are when they can't tell you. And then you have a little bit of time to sort of determine how that goes, and I think family can usually revoke that if they decide to, but,
Then that would also come in line with the stuff up on top saying, keep them comfortable and alive long enough to get this.
to donate, yes.
To donate.
Yep, that's a great point. Yeah, very good, yes.
One of the things that was really hard when Gail was passing away is they kept asking me questions I didn't know the answer to, and they were medical. Should they give him this? Should they give him that? I knew he didn't want his life prolonged, but I didn't know about the procedure of easing him through that. And I don't know if you have an answer to that, but.
I think utilize the people that are there. I know Pearson has had the opportunity to talk with many people. We've worked together in the same hospital where there's bad traumas that come in, and often he does all the hard conversations in there. But that's where you'll have a doctor who can kind of explain those things to you, nurses. I would engage the medical staff and say, wait, I don't understand that. Please explain what my options are. And then they can help you to navigate that. But it's really hard, I mean, to know what those options would be in general, because every situation is a little bit different. I mean, the problems that you're faced with are gonna be different in each case.
The one thing you might want to mention, I know is when I worked as a nurse, we had to ask, even in labor and delivery, we had to ask every patient if they had a living will or advance directives. So when you hear those terms, that's what this paper is.
Yeah.
A living will or an advance directive.
Well,
Yeah.
this was medication. I think we already had that.
Yeah.
But then they were asking me, did I want this, did I want this?
Yeah, and I think you just have to ask, like, is that designed to prolong life or to make him comfortable? And you can
So
sort of.
finally it would just make him comfortable.
Yes, and once you've kind of determined that, then it's a little bit easier to make the decisions on which medications you're going to do. Because at that point, you're probably not gonna do antibiotics or blood pressure medicine or things like that. But you are going to do pain medicine and anxiety medicine and things of that nature. So it kind of changes your focus. Yeah.
But filling out this document should solve the problem, is that right? Is it a problem that isn't solved?
Well, yes, this goes a long ways to solving the problem or to making the case for people to do what you would like, so that medical care. If there's for example, if someone comes in bad shape and we know that the resuscitation attempts are gonna be very unlikely to help, and they have a DNR already signed, then it makes it much easier to move forward with care that is probably more appropriate in those
But
cases.
this document filled out would remove the conversation of how much work they would do to keep you alive.
Yes, unless an assertive family member raises the conversation. Okay, and that's where it gets difficult, because it's really hard to not at least have a conversation with a close family member who's in the room. You are there with them and ultimately have to have that conversation. But if this is filled out, and this also helps a lot if there's conflict. So if to your point, if there's family members that are saying different things, and one of them is saying what's on here and one is not, in general, you're gonna go with what's on here. And that's very helpful in those
So the
situations.
solution is fill out the form and have a conversation with family members now.
Do both, please. Like that's the important thing, is that the form is very helpful, and if it's backed up by family members, then there's not gonna be any conflict there. Things will go much more smoothly.
What do you do in the case for where there's an emergency situation, you got seconds to decide what to do and to go look up the paperwork, it's gonna take minutes.
So that's where the conversation is important, because you're right. I mean, a lot of people get to the hospital, and even though they may have very clear directives, they don't have the form with them. But if a family member comes with them and says, you know what, we've talked about this, they don't want anything more to be done, and then you generally go with that, you know, as long as it's medically reasonable. You know, I mean, if they did that on a 30-year-old that's otherwise healthy and is having a heart attack, we'd say, I don't know. I mean, we probably ought to just treat the heart attack, and you know, they're 30 and healthy. So it you know, as long as it's medically reasonable and the family member is saying, look, this is what their end of life wishes are, then we would go forward and do that.
Once, let's just say I always go to Hospital X, like that's my go-to, everyone knows that. Once the paper is uploaded, the advanced directive, is that now on the hospital records for like 10 years, or that way the physical one is like backup at that point?
Yeah, it should populate and be in the chart. If it can be found, it's even better. You know, like sometimes they get buried in the chart, so to speak, but they're getting better about having these right at the front of the chart. I mean, they're much easier to find.
Oh, I was just gonna say, adding to that, I have had that situation where, and it was, I did have to go home and get the advanced directive to take it back because I wasn't sure exactly when they were asking me.
Yes.
And it was all written out in there.
Yeah.
And I've also had the other where my dad had a DNR, but at the time when he collapsed, my brother just went ahead and then after the emergency was over, realized that's what it was, and they just took priority that way.
Yeah.
I just went through this with my mother, she just died a few months ago, but we have a lot of technology. I had everything. I had the directive to the physician, I had a healthcare power of attorney, I had a durable power of attorney, I had the pulse form. Put it on your phone.
Yeah.
You can take a picture of it or put it in a document. When you get to the hospital, all I did was just say, here it is.
Yeah.
And they said,
there was probably zero question.
Yeah, there was no question about it, and I had to talk to my siblings. And then the other thing is that if they want a copy of it, you can just send them a copy by email or text it to them or whatever. Some of them wanted it, some of them didn't. But with all the technology, you don't have to be running back and forth. Put it on your phone, it's right there.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Okay, I'll take like 2 more questions. I said I would not go over 10 minutes guaranteed, and I am really not doing a good job of it, so, yeah.
Okay,
Barbara.
about this advance directive, you put a child's name on it. What if that child's out of town, out of the country? Can you have a second child?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can designate multiple people there. I think the more information, the better. I mean, they will want one person to be the person, you know, so that if there's big decisions that have to be made, that person is who it's going to go through. But certainly, we don't always have time for that. I mean, and so we're scrambling. You know, we have social workers and other people like scrambling to try and find a family member that can speak with some authority on what the end of life desires are.
So what do you do to have multiple people? Just write more names than one or two?
I would, yeah. I would just include more on there and you know, do the best you can. The forms are not perfect, but I think if you have more on there, it's going to be helpful. Yeah.
Are we allowed to make copies of this paper?
Of this one?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, or just print it offline. I just printed it offline yesterday. Like it's
What
really.
website did you print on?
I just looked up Polst Utah, POLST Utah, and it'll come up as a printable PDF. So yeah, you can print them all out, and yeah, they really they want this out there, and there's probably electronic versions you can fill out. I mean, if you talk to your physician, they may have an electronic version you can fill out. It's more of a primary care thing, so I don't do a lot of the filling out of these. I just need them on the other end when they come and see me in the ER. Yeah.
Is this a national form? Is it universal for all states, or is it?
This is Utah. My guess is it would, to be honest, in the hospital and the ER, when we're taking people in, we're not looking to be lawyers. Like we're not trying to. Well, you know, I don't know that signature. I don't think it matches. You know, I mean, we're really just trying to find out The questions I look at are, is it there? Is it documented and is it reasonable? And if those two things are met, I'm going with it. And if family is supportive, that's so helpful, because then everyone's in line, and then we can really have the appropriate conversations and do the right things. So, okay, I'm gonna stop here, but I am happy to answer questions afterwards. If people have other questions or want to talk further, we can talk more about that. And I would like to give some time to the other topics here, because I need to hear about those.
Just to clarify, I didn't bring a pulse with me or an advanced directive, but there are some minor differences between the two documents. The Utah Healthcare Advanced Directive has two parts to it. It has the healthcare power of attorney, where you designate the individual that you want to be your agent, your decision maker, if you can't make decisions for yourself. And it has two spots. It has a spot for an agent and for an alternate agent. Okay, and then the second part is the living will. And that's where you're putting your healthcare, your advanced healthcare decisions similar to the POLST form in writing. And the language between Section A in the POLST form and the language in the advanced directive is a little different, where the POLST form says, in the case of DNR, do not attempt or continue resuscitation. The language in the advanced directive says, I choose not to receive care for the purpose of prolonging life, or I choose to receive care for the purpose of prolonging life. So they're a little bit different. I come from a little bit different perspective because I haven't worked in the hospital for over 15 years, and my background is in hospice, so we use the POLST form a lot in the home. And to the question of, do they give you time to find it, what we always recommend in the home with the POLST form is to post it on the refrigerator. That's where EMS personnel would most often look for it, is right there. And then you're not trying to find it in the basement in a file or under a pile of papers. It's right there for them to see, and they know what your wishes are. And so those are kind of the differences between the two documents. I kind of came to my main background is in hospice, and so I prepared kind of a lot of nuts and bolts about hospice and the Medicare hospice benefit. But before I get into that, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, because that's kind of dry and it's legal, and everything in hospice is governed by the legislation that Congress passed in the 80s about hospice care and how it's funded. But the essence of hospice is really allowing people to die with comfort, with peace, and to have a dignified passing. And so that's kind of the backdrop. When I got my first hospice job, we were living in California, and I was talking to some people at my current job, letting them know that I was going to hospice. And one of the people said, "Oh, that's God's work." And I didn't really know what she meant. I didn't know anything about hospice, and I probably wouldn't put it in those terms, but it is kind of sacred work. We're kind of helping people at a very vulnerable and emotional time in their lives to accomplish those things, to pass with peace and comfort and dignity. And in the context of the church, we're working with people in that final phase of their journey before they go back to the spirit world. And so that's kind of the backdrop of what I wanted to talk about today. But has anybody, I'm assuming some of you have, had a family member that has been in hospice? Okay, I thought it would be quite a few. And that's, it's kind of fortunate and unfortunate at the same time. But hospice, as I said, was, well, actually hospice started in England a long time ago, and I don't even know exactly when that was, but in America, hospice really started when Congress passed the legislation to fund hospice care primarily in the home. We also do hospice care in facilities, but primarily in the home, and that was in like the early to mid 80s. But in order to qualify for hospice, you have to have a terminal diagnosis or life-limiting diagnosis, and that has to be certified by a physician, usually the primary care physician who refers, or sometimes an oncologist who refers you to hospice, and then the hospice physician also has to sign what's called a certification of terminal illness, which certifies that the individual, if whatever their disease process is, takes its normal course, that they would likely pass in 6 months. Now, it's not limited to that, and we don't kick people off hospice if they don't die within 6 months, but there are people that graduate from hospice that sort of start to get better in some circumstances, and then we do have to discharge them from hospice, and sometimes we end up readmitting them at another time. But the government has really kind of gotten a lot more strict on hospice, what qualifies someone for hospice, what allows them to stay on hospice, and I think that's because over the years it became kind of a profitable business for some companies, and they were keeping people on services for 2, 3, 4 years, and that's not really what hospice was designed for. So what the government did is, or Medicare and Medicaid, they divide the hospice into benefit periods. And at the end of each benefit periods, there has to be a recertification. So there's a new reevaluation to, does this person still qualify for hospice or not? And so the way that works is, at the end of 90 days, there's a recertification, and then again at another 90 days, there's a recertification. So that's 6 months. And then at the end of 6 months, those benefit periods go from 90 days to 60 days. So it's a little more often. They're keeping a little closer eye on what's going on, and there has to be a justification at the end of each benefit period to recertify someone back into, or to continue with hospice. And in the handout, it says that those 60-day benefit periods are unlimited. And that's a little misleading because there still has to be qualifications. Usually what we're looking at for those qualifications is the disease process progressing. And usually when the disease process is progressing, the patient is declining in their functional ability and in various symptoms which qualify for them for hospice to begin with. And so that's kind of how the timeline of hospice works. Hospice covers everything for your health care, except for a few exceptions. So what happens when you come onto hospice? Hospice is covered by your Medicare A benefit. And does everybody know what Medicare A and B are? I think most people are familiar. If you don't, we can talk about that. but it's covered by the Medicare A benefit. And so one of the things that some people don't realize that we should be educating in the admission process is that when you sign on to hospice, you are giving up, at least temporarily, a lot of your Medicare A benefit, A and B benefits. Medicare A is hospitalization in the hospital. It's also, in some cases, pays for nursing home care if you're in the nursing home for rehabilitation. And so when you sign on to hospice, you do not have access to those benefits while you're on hospice. So you can't go to the hospital and receive care. And so those kinds of things. The exception to that is that if you need to receive care for something that is unrelated to the reason that you're on hospice. So let's say you're on hospice for a cancer diagnosis or a heart failure diagnosis. If you need to receive treatment for, let's say you fall and you break your leg, or you've got knee problems and you need to go see your orthopedic doctor, those are unrelated to your heart failure, and so Medicare will pay for those types of treatments. It gets a little tricky with the billing, and we usually have to do some things up front because Medicare gets a claim for a broken leg and they don't look into it and say, oh, what's this person on hospice for? Oh, it's heart failure, we'll cover it. They just say, hospice denied. So what we usually have people do is work with the billing people for whoever is treating them, and everything that's submitted to hospice is submitted by codes. So there's a code for hospice for to tell Medicare that it's unrelated to their hospice diagnosis, and then it usually gets covered. So, yeah.
Can I ask one question? So the one thing I wonder is, I bet there's a lot of people who are helping to care for parents and other things like that who aren't sure what would qualify for hospice, and they're probably leaving some really important services and benefits unutilized. Yeah. Who would they talk to say, hey, is this something that would qualify for hospice or for more home health or anything like that? Is there like an advocate or someone who they can speak with?
I would say two things. The first would be their primary physician, or if some specialty physician that's treating, the main problem. I talk to them. We get most of our referrals from community physicians.
Okay.
The other one is that most hospices, the one that I work for, they will send out a nurse to do a hospice evaluation. And
So you could just call and
kind of go through everything.
Okay.
Yeah, and you don't have to be admitted to hospice to have that evaluation done.
That intake, okay.
Yeah, and that I'm glad you brought that up because that brings up a good point. There are a lot of misconceptions in the community about hospice, and one of them is that hospice is just for when someone is actively dying. That when someone has 24 to 48 hours left to live, that's when you bring in hospice. And we can really provide a lot of services and benefits to the patient and the family if we bring in services earlier. We'd like to get involved earlier rather than later. It's just that it's kind of a balance. If we get involved too early and someone is not really progressing in their disease process, then we sometimes have to discharge, and that's really hard on families because we brought in all these services. Hospice brings in a hospice physician, nurse, CNA, nurse assistant, social worker, and chaplain, and it's an interdisciplinary team that are all coming in to provide different services and support. It's not just medical, end of life, comfort support. It's all these other disciplines too. So sometimes if we bring in all these services and then 6-8 months later, we take them all away. And so that's hard. So we like to kind of thread that needle and find the right place and the right time to start hospice. Yeah.
I'd just like to mention that with my mom, that we had no idea when to call hospice. And I'm not sure who told us, but we brought them in, and they were so informative. They saw everything going on with my mom, and they knew exactly what was happening because they were so familiar with people deteriorating and going to die. And they said, she's doing this, this, and this, and we had no idea what those things meant. The nurses in the assisted living didn't have any concept of that apparently. And so my mom died about 2 months after we brought them in, and if we'd had more information and we would have contacted sooner and had that help coming for her a little bit sooner. And so I just wanted to say that you know, don't try and delay things, you know, call and find out and have them come and see if they are ready to be put on.
That's great, yeah. I'm glad that was a good experience.
Well, the primary care physician is the link to hospice, and I didn't think that I quote needed that I could care for my husband, but the truth is, he weighed another 50 or 60 pounds more than I did, and the very everyday tasks of having a shower was safer having this man, who's 6 foot and 200 pounds, being in charge of the shower. So it's just simple things that are not dramatic, but therefore we had no accidents in the shower.
Exactly,
As he's going through these other problems of
The CNAs did really provide a great service.
They do.
In fact, when we have to discharge people, sometimes the biggest concern with the family is, how are we going to replace the CNA? Because they can go back to their doctor, or their house call services that bring physicians or nurse practitioners in to do those things, but the CNA is a big one.
Well, just the other one, that there was rules and it wasn't very much help, but that somebody would come and sit with him for an hour so I could leave the house.
Yes, volunteers. We have volunteers too.
We hate to cut you short, but we gotta give Jeff some time.
All right, I know we're over.
Thank you.
Okay, the first thing I'll do is my mom, my wife said start a timer. There it goes. So you're probably wondering why I am up here. I actually was a financial advisor, financial planner, investment advisor for 40 years, and I saw well over 200 clients die in that time period. That was the saddest part of my occupation. So I told people that, you know, we're new clients. If you become a client of ours, you'll probably die. And if you didn't, you'd die anyway. So I just want to, my sheet has a lot of stuff on it, and I probably could have done 10 more pages, but I wanted to hit just a few things on here that I've seen as concerns, and one of them that we seem to be talking about already in here is that the healthcare power of attorney and the wills and those, and one of the things that we always stressed, and we did not do as financial advisors, attorneys did, but there are a lot of programs online that you can go to do that. So for myself and for clients, I just did this for my mother, is that if you do a power of attorney, a general power of attorney, that is good for about a year with most places, and that will let you do all the financial things. A durable power of attorney will let you do when someone becomes incapacitated or cannot take care of themselves physically, mentally, and so that durable power of attorney comes in. And then also, if you put, as Pearson said, you put those other two things in, the pulse form and the directive or a healthcare power of attorney, you've made a decision there of who's going to speak, and so you don't have that I spoke to all my siblings and we talked through that for my mother and decided who was going to decide on that, and guess who got stuck with that? And I do say stuck because it's a tough situation to see someone in the hospital and then you're following through on those directives when maybe that's not what you want to do. But if you have that all in place, those are very important. So a lot of the things that are on here, I did put this end of life, but you should go through this form and look at some of those things. And if you don't have them in place, that's the preparation that needs to be done to make sure that everything will run more smoothly. And for my mom, I'll just tell you, she died in May, and I just finished up with everything just this month. And she didn't have a home, she had no assets, she really had nothing. Her children were supporting her. And it took me about 5 months to clean everything up. For clients that we had that passed away, it took sometimes a year or two to clean things up if it wasn't put in place properly. So one of the big things is to put things in place. So I'm gonna hit a few of these, and I'm not gonna take any questions, but I'll certainly answer some afterwards unless we have other time, but we're already over time. So one of the things that's been mentioned, if you go about halfway down in there, actually, it's farther down in there, it says to be involved in what's happening now. And other people have talked about that. I handled hundreds of millions of dollars over the years, and I've never paid a bill at home. I don't know how to pay the bills at home. My wife does it all. Yep. So that's one of the things we've talked about is I need to learn how to figure that stuff out, because if she was gone, that would be a problem for me. So one of the biggest things that we always heard from clients when somebody passed away it was usually from the wife, is that I have no idea. He did everything. He handled all the investments, he paid all the bills, he took care of the insurance, he did everything. You need to be involved now. That's one of the first things that you need to be involved in, to make sure that you know what's happening so that when someone passes away, you're not stuck, like other people have said, not knowing what's happening. The second thing, the other first thing that I told clients all the time was, and it's down here at the end, is don't be pressured into making hasty decisions. Take your time. There's no hurry on most things financially. There are a few, but most things you can take your time on. You don't have to rush into anything. If it doesn't feel good to you, if it makes you uncomfortable, don't do it. Don't do it. Take your time and look it over. The last one on this list I'm going to hit, and then I'll hit some other things, is pray for guidance. I prayed for clients, and I prayed about their stuff, and I prayed about my own stuff. The Book of Mormon says that the Holy Ghost will tell you the truth of all things. Include the Lord in all your planning. He'll give you some good ideas, I guarantee you. So a couple other things I did want to hit was one of the big things that we saw in the industry was scams are becoming more prevalent. I'll tell you real briefly, we had a situation where we had a client and she started withdrawing money, and we kept asking her what it was for, and she said, well, I'm getting some to my kids and some to here. Turns out that her husband had died, and she was very active on social media, on Facebook, and somebody contacted her because she was talking about how lonely she was. Somebody contacted her and started a relationship with her and said, he wanted to meet her, they wanted to get married and all this stuff, and then he started telling her about all his problems. Well, it ended up, she lost $160,000 in that. And that wasn't the only, we had quite a few cases for those kind of scams. So one of the big things I talk about is watch out for scams on the phone, mail, email, whatever. I just had a situation myself where one of the companies I deal with got hacked, and so credit companies, I listed them on there. Consider putting a fraud alert or freeze on. I just had to freeze all of my stuff because got hacked. So that does happen, but it's very prevalent when someone dies because your information's out there. There's an obituary, and people get on Facebook and talk about it, and then you have people come in and want to be your friend and help you and give you great ideas and sell you something or whatever it is. So be very careful about that. The other thing that one of the problems I always saw was, I shouldn't say always saw more than once is a lot of people have life insurance. And with your life insurance, you need to update beneficiaries on a regular basis. One of the cases that was somewhat humorous but not is that we had clients that separated, they were divorced, and the husband went to another financial advisor and she stayed with us, and he died and never changed the beneficiary. He got remarried. And his wife said, that's the best thing he ever did for me. She got the life insurance and the new one didn't. So be careful about beneficiaries. You need to update those, make sure they're changed, make sure that they're taken care of. Let's see. A few other things in there that, and I'm almost about out of time, but a few other things in there is Social Security will notify at the death. Typically, they'll be notified by the funeral home. But one thing you need to do is just make sure that's taken care of, and also then update with Social Security for benefits. There are benefits that need to be taken care of there. That's another thing that Sister Bird talked about is employer. You know, if you're still working, you know, there's a lot of benefits that employers have, and you need to, you know, make contact with the employer and make sure that those things are taken care of, that they know what benefits are available, what benefits, you know, you could take advantage of. I will say that some of the things that are really important is putting together, securing all your documents, putting them in one place. And with technology, that's much easier to do nowadays than it used to be. We had clients come in and they'd have, you know, binders this thick, you know, of all their stuff, which was really great. But you can put it on your phone, you can put it on, you know, a document on your computer. Like I mentioned earlier with my mom, you can put all those forms that you need right on your phone, and then you have it right with you to show there. So putting everything in one place is really critical to know where to get a hold of that, because it does take time. A case that I'll tell you that we had took us several years, but the wife brought in boxes. She probably brought in 10 file boxes of papers that the husband had. He'd saved everything his whole life, it seemed like. You know, we're trying to go through all of those things to see, you know, what's current and what's not. So updating that file is important also to make sure that you have what you need. So any attorneys in the room? No attorneys in the room? No, we got one. So he was embarrassed to put his hand up. No, I'm not going to say it. We work very closely with attorneys and CPAs and tax advisors, very closely with them. But one of the things that I will tell you is that there's a lot of programs out there, and I will tell you that I did my own trust and will online, but I'm very familiar. I've read hundreds of trusts and wills over the years. I would not suggest you do that unless you think you're very competent. So most people have a real problem saying, well, I don't want to pay a financial advisor, I don't want to pay a CPA, I don't want to pay an attorney, you know, they're just taking my money. Well, I can tell you from years of experience, it's worth the money. Pay a few bucks now to put that in place, to put your wills in place, put your trust in place. A will is basically going to tell you who gets what. The trust is basically going to designate how it gets there. In the state of Utah, probate is next to nothing, really. It doesn't cost that much. We're very fortunate here, and we're not a common law state. There are 9 common law states in the U.S., but we're not one of them, which means anything that you own and you own it jointly is owned 100% by both of you. So, for example, on your house, if you both are on the title of your house, when your spouse dies, you own the house 100% still on that. I'm going to hit one more thing because my wife's telling me back there.
So just really quickly, so if you're that way, but say you're just one of you, do you put one of your children on the house so that they own it with you?
I probably would not do that because then you're in a liability issue.
Okay.
I would not do that. I would probably put a trust in place and put the trust in
The
put that home in the trust. And then talk to your insurance company, because a lot of insurance companies want the home to be titled. They want it to be one of the owners on the insurance policy in order to pay out on that if it's in the trust. One last thing I'll hit you with, because it's come up a lot recently. You've probably seen commercials on TV about title to your home. I've done a lot of research on this recently. There's a place called Title Lock that's out there all the time that talks about it. You can go to, and it's down towards the end of here, it's saltlakecounty.gov/recorder. And if you go to property search, data services, and free search, you can check it. But you can also, in that same website, put on what's called a property watch. But here's the problem with that service that they advertise and property watch. They only notify you after it's been done. So somebody can come in with a false title, forge it, change the title on your home, take it over, and then you have to go to court to have that changed. You can't just walk back in and change it. But I did say to the lady on the phone when she was telling me that, I said, so I could basically forge another title and get it back. She said, well, that wouldn't be good. I said, well, hey, they did it in the first place. Why not me do it? I'm just gonna do it back. But I would recommend going in and doing that property watch, because at least you're gonna find out if somebody has changed the title on your home, because for a lot of people, that's their largest asset, is their home. Yes.
Is the property watch the one that is through the Utah government?
Yes, it's through Salt Lake County, the recorder's office. And it's free to put on, and once your house is taken, they'll let you know.
The sooner you find out about it,
Yeah.
Yes, you at least find out about it and can take some legal steps before they take all the equity out and you get foreclosed on. Yes.
Does Title Lock, would Title Lock be better than,
Title Lock does the same thing. They notify, there's no way you can stop it. So they notify you afterwards. What they will do, and it may be worthwhile for some people, but I read a lot of reviews on it, but what they will do is try to help you legally get the title back afterwards. But there's nothing, according to the county recorder, there's nothing you can do to stop it. There's no kind of freeze or lock or anything you can put on your home title to stop it from being taken. It's not as popular, but it's getting more popular where people are doing that. And I put it on here because, again, when someone dies, you've got a public notice, and that's a great time to go playing with titles and other things. So.
Where does the public notice come from? Or how does it get out?
In the newspaper,
Oh,
Facebook. I went way over. But yeah, it gets out everywhere, because all you have to do is go on social media. Go on most social media, and people are talking about, oh, my dad just died, oh, my wife died, my husband, it's out there. It gets out there really quick, and so people, it's easy to figure it out. Thank you. It's great to see everybody here. This is fabulous, because I said to my wife, how many people do you think are going to show up for this? So I only did 35 copies. So if you need a copy, if you didn't get a copy, see me and I'll get you one.
I think Julie went and copied some while we were.
Okay, thank you. And I'll be around afterwards if you have any questions.
Thank you to our presenters, and thank you again so much for being here. Please, again, feel free to get a bagel and juice, and Brother Steve Knudsen will offer our closing prayer.